Salvete omnes. Hi everybody. We'll start with this sentence, which is in present tense. Can you guess what it means? Poeta scribit. Poeta scribit. Poeta should be obvious, and if you recall words like scribe, scribble, script, you can probably figure out that scribit means write. But wait, there are only two words. Is this sentence complete? Yes, actually in Latin, there are no words corresponding to a or the. This has to be pulled from context. So, poeta scribit can mean the poet writes or a poet writes, depending on the sentence that came before it. Discipula studet. Discipula studet. Looking at the second word, can you guess the first? Who is it that studies? A disciplined disciple is a student, right? That's right. This means the student studies or a student studies. Notice that the C in discipula is a hard sound like a k. This is always the case for classical Latin. C's never make a s sound. Okay, now how would we say the student writes? Can you remember? Discipula scribit. Discipula scribit. And the poet studies? Poeta studet. Poeta studet. Now let's change it up a little. Ego studeo. Ego studeo. Do you see how we changed from studet to studeo? This is like the change from studies to study. So we know that the subject of this sentence is somehow different. Now, someone with a big ego is always thinking about themselves, so it's easy to remember that ego means I. This sentence means I study. Now for I write, we won't be able to guess the form following the pattern above, because it's ego scribo. Ego scribo. So we have so far poeta scribit, discipula scribit, poeta studet, discipula studet, ego scribo, ego studeo. Let's add another verb, discipula legit. Discipula legit. When something is legible, we are able to read it. But notice that, just like the C in discipula, the G in Latin is always a hard sound. Can you guess how to say, I read? Ego lego. Ego lego. The word you in Latin is tu, with a long vowel. You equals tu. Pretty easy to remember, right? And if it helps you, remember that thou begins with a T. And for our three verbs, we have tu scribis, tu studes, tu legis. Are you starting to see a pattern? Verbs conjugated with ego always end with a long o. When the subject is tu, the verb always ends with s. And for third person singular, the verb ends in t. The only difficult part is that the vowel sometimes changes before these endings. But there are only a few conjugation patterns, so it's not that bad. Let's add another verb. Ego dormio. Ego dormio. From this word come the English words dormant and dormitory. Can you guess the meaning? That's right, I sleep. And the student sleeps would be? Discipula dormit. The tu form is a little different from what we've seen. It has a long E vowel. Tu dormis. Tu dormis. Now, what do you think this sentence means? Agricola dormit. Agricola dormit. Look at the first four letters. This is a person that has something to do with agriculture, a farmer. And what does this mean? Agricola laborat. Agricola laborat. Chop off the at and we have labor or work. And I work would be ego laboro. Ego laboro. For the tu form, we have a change again, but you might be able to guess it from laborat. You work is tu laboras. Tu laboras. Now we have seen all the different verb patterns. Let's put them all together. Laboro, scribo, studio, dormio. Laboras, scribis, studes, dormis. Laborat, scribit, studet, dormit. Note the differences and similarities in the patterns. All verbs end in either o, s, or t. The vowel before o is dropped half of the time. The vowel before the s in the tu form is almost always long, just like the u in tu is long. What we think of as dictionary form for a verb, i.e. to work, is known as the infinitive form. For the verbs we've learned so far, this looks like laborare, scribere, studere, dormire. As you can see, the vowel before re in scribere is short, just like the tu form for this verb. But again, don't try to memorize these rules, because that's no fun, and you will naturally learn them as we work through more verbs, like this one. Discipula discit. Discipula discit. We already learned discipula studet, so can you think of something else students do? It's a little hard to guess, so I'll just give away that this means learns. Look at this next sentence. What do you think et means? Discipula legit et discit. Discipula legit et discit. This word is used in the famous line from Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar when he says, Et tu, Brute? And you, Brutus? He says this after he sees that his friend Brutus is one of his assassins, and the phrase is often alluded to in literature when there is an unexpected betrayal by a friend. So et means and. Can you figure out how to say you study and learn? Tu studes et discis. Did you remember the short e sound? Now try to say you work and write and study and sleep. Tu laboras et scribis et studes et dormis. The next word doesn't have as easy of an association with an English word, but thinking of magistrate or maestro might help. A magistra is a teacher. And what does a teacher do? Magistra docet. Magistra docet. Teacher teaches. This verb has ties to indoctrinate and doctrine. Also, someone who is docile is teachable. And it's easy to remember if you know what a docent is. The infinitive is docere. So how do we say I teach and you teach in Latin? Ego doceo et tu doces. We're now ready to tackle our first proverb in Latin. That's kind of amazing, isn't it? Qui docet, discit. Qui docet, discit. Look at the first word. The WH sound in English is a QU sound in Latin. So if you see a short word starting with QU, it most likely means who, what, where, when, or why. Since we know what docet and discit mean, can you guess the meaning of this sentence? It's actually not a question. It literally means who teaches learns, or more elegantly phrased, he who teaches learns. Don't worry if you don't remember everything from this lesson. We will be repeating everything along the way. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share, and if you can, consider supporting the channel on Patreon. Gracias!